Quicksand, nature's version of a surprise trapdoor minus the trapdoor. It's claimed lives, inspired movie scenes, and somehow still feels like a myth until it's not. In this video, we're diving into the 5 worst deaths by quicksand in human history. Gruesome? Yes. Morbidly fascinating? Also yes. So, grab a vine, just in case, and let's sink in. Snow, sand, and sheer panic. Welcome to Zion National Park, where the views are gorgeous, the trails are scenic, and apparently, the ground can eat you. No one tells you that last part on the brochure. Ryan Osman and his girlfriend Jessica were wrapping up what should have been a wholesome hike, complete with mountain air, cold toes, and picturesque ponds. But Mother Nature had other plans, and she wasn't in the mood to play nice. They had just crossed a shallow pond, probably daydreaming about hot cocoa or at least a dry pair of socks, when the sky started getting all moody and dramatic. Think gray clouds rolling in like villains in a disaster movie. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, Ryan's foot plunged into what looked like solid ground. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. 1 second he was walking. The next, he was halfway to China, swallowed up to the thigh in what turned out to be, yep, good old-fashioned quicksand. Surprise, nature's deadliest oatmeal. And as a bonus twist, no phone signal, no help in sight, and oh look, a blizzard was rolling in. Jessica instantly transformed from girlfriend to emergency response team. She handed Ryan 2 sticks to brace around his leg like a makeshift splint and began scooping out the mud with her bare hands. Bare hands. Like it was the world's worst episode of Survivor. But the quicksand had other ideas. Every scoop she took out filled right back in like some sadistic magic trick. Within 30 minutes, snow was dumping like it was trying to set a record, and temperatures were plummeting faster than Ryan's hope. His body started to shut down, because apparently, being frozen and buried in mud isn't ideal for human survival. Go figure. Realizing time was running out, Ryan told Jessica the most dramatic and heroic thing he could think of. Leave me. Not in a movie way. More in a please find help or I will become a snow popsicle kind of way. So Jessica ran into the storm, into the wild. No GPS, no signal, no guarantee she'd even find help, much less return in time. Meanwhile, Ryan entered what we can only describe as the worst nap ever. He drifted in and out of consciousness, snow piling onto him like nature's cruelest blanket. He was sure this was it, his final story, cause of death, sand soup. But hours later, just when things were getting extra hopeless, a light appeared. No, not that light, a flashlight, then voices. Jessica had pulled off the impossible. She found a rescue team and led them right back to him. Ryan wasn't out of the mud yet, though. The rescuers had to dig like maniacs, one yanking him by the shoulders while another frantically shoveled cold mud off his leg. Every touch felt like being stabbed by icicles. Every second was agony. But after 12 brutal hours, yes, 12, Ryan was finally free. Alive, frozen, traumatized, but free. His leg was okay, his body slowly warmed up, but his mind not so much. For 3 months, Ryan woke up drenched in sweat, haunted by nightmares of sand, snow, and slow-motion sinking. He survived, yes, but it wasn't just physical. It was a mental cage match against the elements, fear, and a very uncooperative patch of ground. So, next time someone tells you quicksand isn't a real danger, tell them about Ryan Osman, the man who survived being swallowed by the earth and snowstormed by the sky. Zion may be stunning, but it doesn't mess around, and neither does quicksand. Endurance. It's not about bulging biceps or how many push-ups you can crank out at the gym. No. True endurance is when Mother Nature herself tries to drag you underground like a villain in a low-budget horror film, and you still manage to hang in there. That's exactly the nightmare that 25-year-old Robbie Tassar stumbled into. Our story begins in the wilds of Utah, near a cheerfully named patch of land called the Dirty Devil River. Spoiler alert, it lives up to the name. Robbie was on a 25-day wilderness expedition with his class, probably expecting scenic views, rugged bonding, and maybe a blister or two. Instead, he got front row seats to his own survival thriller. After 3.5 weeks of hardcore hiking across brutal terrain that could have doubled as Mars, Robbie and the group were crossing what looked like a totally innocent riverbank. You know, just some dry sand. Nothing to see here, folks. Robbie took a step, and the next thing anyone knew, whoosh, the guy was sinking faster than your Wi-Fi during a storm. Within seconds, he was waist-deep in quicksand. Yes, actual quicksand. The stuff we all thought only existed in cartoons and 80s action flicks. This wasn't just a whoops, I tripped moment. This was a the earth is trying to eat me situation. Cue the panic. Robbie's classmates rushed in, pulling at his arms like a game of human tug-of-war. But quicksand isn't just sand. It's basically clingy mud with abandonment issues. The more they yanked, the more it held on. To make matters worse, Mother Nature decided to really double down on the drama. Temperatures dropped to just above freezing, 4 degrees Celsius, that's 39 degrees Fahrenheit for those using freedom units. And the wet, clingy mud began to harden around Robbie like nature's own version of cement shoes. Minutes dragged into hours. And not that this meeting could have been an email kind of hours. These were long, freezing, terrifying hours. Every tick of the clock drained more hope. The group had no choice but to activate their emergency beacon, which basically sends an SOS to whoever's got a helicopter in a bad sense of danger. Night fell. Rescue teams arrived, armed not with capes and superpowers but with inflatable rafts and shovels, because you don't mess around with quicksand. One wrong move, and they could have ended up adding more guests to the mud party. They dug carefully, inch by inch, until, at 1 a.m., a full 13 hours after Robbie took his fateful step, he was finally pulled free from the Earth's clingy embrace. Miraculously, he survived with all limbs intact and a story that beats any dinner party anecdote. That time, I almost got eaten by the ground. Definitely beats I saw a moose once. The real kicker? This deadly trap looked like just another patch of dirt. Innocent, ordinary, bland. But quicksand doesn't come with neon warning signs or ominous music cues. Rivers, beaches, hiking trails, they're all potential quicksand hideouts. And once you step in, it's already too late. It doesn't suck you under like in the movies, it just holds you in place for hours until you either freeze, dehydrate, or get lucky. So, the next time you're out hiking and see a patch of sand that looks a little too inviting, maybe take the long way around. Robbie did 13 hours in nature's cold mud hug. You don't want to top that. Imagine you're on a peaceful beach walk, the sun's gently shining, the waves are doing their soft shh thing, and life is feeling pretty postcard perfect. Now, imagine the earth just yeets your legs like it's had enough of your vacation vibes. That's exactly what happened to Jaime Accord on a seemingly innocent stroll along the shores of Phippsburg, Maine. Jaime and her husband were enjoying what can only be described as a dreamy couple's walk along a quiet beach. The sand beneath their feet felt firm, like this could be a beach commercial firm. Birds chirped, the breeze whispered. Everything was going great, until it wasn't. Without any warning, like zero drama buildup, Jaime's legs just disappeared. Poof, gone. One moment she was walking, the next she was sunk waist-deep in a sand trap that didn't even have the courtesy to say hello. I couldn't get myself out, Jaime later recalled, sounding way more composed than most of us would be in that moment. Naturally, she turned to her husband and asked the obvious question, "Can you pull me out?" To which he replied, completely gobsmacked, "Where are your legs?" Not exactly reassuring. Jaime, to her credit, could feel her legs, which is nice, but she couldn't see them. Not so nice. Thankfully, her husband snapped out of his quicksand-induced confusion and managed to yank her free from the sneaky sinkhole. Crisis averted, legs recovered, dignity, hopefully, still intact. But not everyone gets a happy ending with surprise beach quicksand. In fact, quicksand along beaches is sneakier than a cat in a cucumber field. Especially during low tide, it loves to play camouflage. You might walk right into it without realizing it's not solid ground, just overly saturated sand with a thin sheet of water over it. Looks normal, feels like a betrayal. Enter Shane Hobble, survival expert and professional don't die this way guy. He later demonstrated how you should deal with a quicksand situation. Should you find yourself channeling your inner Indiana Jones on the shoreline? First rule, don't panic. Easier said than done when Mother Earth is slurping up your feet like a milkshake. Flailing around? Bad idea. That just makes you sink faster. The real trick, according to Shane, is to stop and slow your roll. Literally, you want to shift your weight gradually. Spread your limbs like a human starfish and try to distribute your body across the surface. Use a stick if you've got one, and if not, get on your hands and knees and slowly crawl out like you're sneaking away from a toddler's birthday party. The key word here is slow. Drama gets you deeper. What's especially unnerving is that we tend to think of quicksand as something out of a jungle adventure flick. You know, vines, snakes, fog, the whole shebang. But no, sometimes it's chilling right beneath your beach towel while you're daydreaming about ice cream. So, what did we learn here? First, always check your sand before you strut. Second, if the ground suddenly gives you the silent treatment and tries to eat your lower half, stay cool and channel your inner sloth. And finally, quicksand doesn't need a jungle. It just needs one unsuspecting beachgoer and a little low-tide mischief. As we shimmy over to our next tale, brace yourself, because the next death trap isn't wet and sunny, it's cold, remote, and eerily silent. From beachy betrayal to frosty wilderness, the quicksand saga continues. It's easy to be seduced by a beautiful view, especially one like Moramp Bay, with its postcard-perfect coastline, tranquil waves, and skies that practically beg to be Instagrammed. It looks like the kind of place where danger wouldn't dare show its face, but behind the serene surface lies something far more sinister. Moramp Bay isn't just a picturesque picnic spot, it's a shape-shifting death trap disguised as a tourist attraction. This coastal beauty is notorious for two things: legendary fishing and quicksand that moves faster than your Wi-Fi during a storm. The sandbanks here don't sit still. They shuffle around like a magician's 3-card trick. And if you guess wrong, you don't just lose your footing, you might lose your life. The currents are powerful, unpredictable, and constantly carving new paths through the seabed, creating quicksand pits that appear and disappear faster than your favorite snacks during a Netflix binge. Enter Karen Parkinson and her merry band of unsuspecting beachgoers. It was meant to be a chill day by the water. Some laughs, a little sun, and maybe a paddle in the shallows if things got wild. They weren't adventurers. They weren't daredevils. They were just regular folks looking for some seaside relaxation. But Moramp Bay had other plans. The day was peaceful, until it wasn't. Suddenly, a siren shattered the calm. Not the ice cream truck is here kind of siren. No, this was the kind of siren that screams, "Run, now!" The tide was rolling in fast, faster than they expected. They turned to head back, but Mother Nature had already played her card. In the blink of an eye, one girl from the group found herself waist deep in what looked like regular old beach. Her legs had vanished into the wet sand like she was being swallowed whole by a beach monster. Spoiler, the beach monster was real, and its name was Quicksand. Karen and the girl's mother rushed to her side because that's what heroes do. Unfortunately, Quicksand doesn't care about your intentions. It grabbed them too. In a matter of seconds, they were all stuck. Not, oops, mud on my shoes, stuck. More like, if I move, I might disappear entirely, stuck. And to make things extra spicy, the water was rising fast, turning their sandy predicament into a literal race against the tide. Cue the entrance of the real MVPs, the Coast Guard. 12 of them, all trained, all fast, and all wearing the kind of bright gear that screams, "We save lives before breakfast." They arrived just in time and immediately sprang into action. Ropes, teamwork, a little grunting, and probably some very intense eye contact. One by one, the rescuers yanked the victims free from the mud's clingy embrace. It wasn't elegant, and it definitely wasn't comfortable, but it was effective. Had they arrived just 5 minutes later, the story would have taken a very dark turn. That peaceful bay, it would have claimed 3 lives without a second thought. So, what can we learn here? Well, first, never trust a pretty beach with a sketchy reputation. Second, quicksand is not just a movie thing. It's very real, very sneaky, and has absolutely no chill. And third, if a siren goes off while you're at the beach, don't stop to take selfies. Run like you're being chased by angry crabs with boxing gloves. Karen and her crew were lucky, but as you'll see in our next story, not everyone gets a cinematic rescue. Because while Moramp Bay hides danger beneath beauty, there are places out there where even trained hikers, explorers, and seasoned wanderers fall victim to nature's silent traps. Stay tuned, because some landscapes don't just test your strength, they test your timing, your choices, and your ability to avoid becoming part of the scenery. Some days start off so perfectly normal, they feel like a commercial for fishing rods and father-son bonding. That was the vibe near an Oklahoma riverbank one peaceful morning. Birds chirping, water gently flowing, and absolutely zero indication that the earth was about to try and swallow a child. Picture this: a father and his 12-year-old son, poles in hand, living their best rural life. The only danger they expected was a fish yanking the line too hard, or maybe the kid losing a worm to a particularly rude trout. But then, with one innocent step, the boy's right leg pulled a disappearing act straight into the riverbank. Not mud, not soft dirt. No, he'd landed in nature's sneakiest trap: quicksand. Thick, heavy, clingy quicksand. The stage 5 clinger of terrain types. Dad, channeling full superhero energy, dove to the rescue. He managed to yank out the boy's left leg like a man pulling Excalibur from a stone. But the right leg? That sucker was deeply committed to the bit. It had RSVP'd to the underground party and was not planning on leaving. Cue the entrance of local firefighters, 3 of them, all confident and probably thinking, "We've handled fires, floods, and cats in trees. How hard can this be?" Spoiler, very. They grabbed the boy's arms and pulled with all their might, probably imagining a triumphant pop like opening a stubborn jar. Nothing. The kid didn't budge. Quicksand, 1. Fire department, 0. Not ones to back down, the firefighters dropped to the ground and started digging with their bare hands. This was no longer a rescue. It was a dirt-fueled brawl between humans and Mother Nature's gooey trap. But then, plot twist. The rescuers began sinking too. Yep, the quicksand was like, "Oh, you want to help? How about you stay a while?" Panic? Maybe. Cleverness? Definitely. Thinking fast, the crew grabbed driftwood and fallen branches like some sort of survivalist Lego set. They built an impromptu platform, standing on it like swamp kings to stop themselves from turning into the next chapter of this cautionary tale. Meanwhile, the boy wasn't doing great. His leg was numb, his body was shaking, and hypothermia was making its dramatic entrance. This was now a race against time, temperature, and topography. For almost an hour, they battled stubborn soil with sheer willpower, a few logs, and a mutual refusal to let a kid be defeated by literal dirt. Finally, thanks to good old-fashioned teamwork, they pulled the boy free. He was cold, shaken, but alive, and probably never going near a muddy riverbank again. The damage? Mild hypothermia. The lesson? Quicksand is real, it doesn't care about your relaxing day, and apparently it has a grudge against fishing trips. In the end, one small misstep transformed a Norman Rockwell afternoon into something out of an action movie, minus the explosions, plus a whole lot of wet socks. Moral of the story: if the ground feels extra squishy, maybe step back instead of forward. Just saying.